So for equipment, it's essentially everything we've accumulated during our project. So our pot, our leaves, our soil, our macrame, and we have some extras like all the stuffing, as well as our needle and thread. And the first thing that we're going to do is attach the leaves to the soil. So here I'm taking about 4 or 5 leaves and just kind of laying them flat and trying to get all of the yarn pieces kind of flat and bunched together. And then I'm going to stick my hook into the bottom of and put all my leaf strands over the top and use the hook to just pull it through so all the strands come out the bottom. So I did a set of 4 or 5 there in the start, and now I'm going to try and get the rest through the soil. Now what I'm going to do is just an extra step. It's just to check everything. So I'm going to pull on every single strand as well as kind of roughly count the strands just to ensure everything is there. And then I'm going to split everything in half and I'm going to tie 2 or 3 big knots at the bottom here. And this is just ensuring that if the leaves are pulled on from the top that they're not going to make their way through that little hole in the soil. I'm cutting off all the extras because this can be used as stuffing in our pot. Now, in order to sew everything together, I'm just making a knot in my needle and thread. So I'm just taking the thread after obviously it's gone through the needle and I'm just making a knot at the end. But I'm making sure this knot is quite thick because I don't want the knot to come out in any point in time. So step 2 is attaching our soil to the pot using a needle and a thread. So first I'm going to just add the stuffing to the pot, and this is obviously just my excess yarn. I'm adding maybe 1/3 of the stuffing to the pot before I sew everything on, and I'm pushing it down to the bottom. Now in order to start, I'm just going to take my needle and I'm going to thread it into my soil from the bottom up. This is ensuring that that knot is at the bottom of the soil. And from now on, every time I pull my thread out, I'm going to be pushing my needle in the exact same space so that we don't end up seeing the thread at all. It does like an invisible little thread. And I'm going to stick this needle into the place where I want my soil to go, which is just by the rim of the pot. So just under the rim of the pot, making sure that our soil is inside the pot and not coming out of the pot. We want it to be as realistic as we can make it. So I'm just going to push that bulbous of leaves at the bottom into the pot and pull my thread pretty tight. And again, every time we pull the needle out, we're going to put it in the exact same hole. And this ensures that our thread is invisible and that you never see it at any point in time. And from now on, I'm just going to weave in and out on the edge of the soil into the rim of the pot and going all the way around the pot, making sure that there aren't any big gaps in my soil, and also be conscious of the leaves because they can get caught quite easily in this thread. When you're about roughly halfway or 2/3 of the way, we're just going to finish off stuffing our pot. So I'm just using excess yarn offcuts and I'm just pushing it in to my pot. And we want the stuffing to actually kind of fill the pot. If you don't fill the pot with the stuffing, it can be, well, it just doesn't look as great. So rather fill up your pot with your stuffing, add more cut up excess yarn if needed, and make sure everything is quite full. And then we're going to continue to just go in and out of the same hole with the thread, needle and thread, ensuring that everything is pulled through and that the soil is fully attached with no gaps. Once we're at the end, I'm going to push my needle in and make sure the tip of the needle is coming out in the middle of the soil. And here I'm going to make a knot. So I'm just catching the top of the soil, pulling through and leaving a loop. I'm taking my needle and going in through that loop just to make a knot, and that secures our thread. Snip it off, and I'm going to use my hook to kind of make this ending bit invisible. So I'm pulling the thread and the knot into the pot. And now we have our little plant. You can rearrange the leaves however you like for aesthetics, and just make sure everything is lying relatively flat. Now we're going to move on to the last step, which is adding our plants to the macrame. So typically I'm going to put the plant upside down as well as the macrame. This is just easier for assembling reasons. And I'm going to open the macrame up on the side and put the plant in upside down. Now what I'm trying to achieve here is to make sure that wrapping knot is in the middle of the pot. So everything needs to align. If you ever see your pot is hanging askew, it's probably because the wrapping knot is not aligned with the middle of your pot. And now I'm just separating the leaves. So there's 4 sections of the macrame, so I'm just ensuring that 2 leaves go into every single section of the macrame. Again, ensure that that wrapping knot is at the bottom of your pot so that everything hangs straight. And the last thing I'm going to do is just make sure that the bottom of my macrame is only 2 centimeters. It just suits this pot much better. So in this one, I see I've left 4 centimeters at the bottom of my macrame, so I'm just double checking. I'm measuring 2 centimeters after that wrapping knot. And I'm going to chop off all the ends because to me that looks much better aesthetically. Now you have a beautiful little plant.